Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, Jeff Waldorf with you. Got a great show for you guys today, this Thursday evening. So we're going to start out with, of course, some more shutdown news, including Wilbur Ross. That's a great story on his advice for furloughed workers. Then we got a story on Kellyanne Conway. Is Kellyanne Conway the White House leaker? That's a fascinating story. Then, of course, you've got AOC versus Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And Chris Cuomo actually says something about Venezuela that makes sense. So I'm going to give him a lot of credit on that. Then we've got the Biden story from yesterday and an update on that. So we got a great show today, like I said. A lot of fun. So before we get into it, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Not only that, but we'll give you a quick update here on the fundraiser. We're at $690 for the camera. We're trying to raise $1,500. And the latest donation came yesterday from Pascal Filth. I'm sorry about that. I don't know how to say your name correctly. I hope I got it. But thank you so much for the donation. Then I want to give a couple of shout outs to our new channel members, Brotown and Vincent Hinton. So thank you, Brotown. Love that name, that handle. And Vincent for signing up to be a channel member. So thank you. That goes to support the show. All right, guys. So real quick here. Thanks to everybody who's been donating on that stuff. I appreciate that. You guys are awesome, amazing as usual, and you know you're helping independent progressive media, so I appreciate that. All right, so let's move on. Let's go to the first story. Let's talk shutdown. I got some bad heartburn. Sorry, guys. I shouldn't have had a sub with a bunch of onions prior to the show. So this is going to be fun. Now, Donald Trump and Nancy Pelosi recently went head-to-head over the State of the Union. So, you know, they went like they were basically trading some barbs and whatever, trying to negotiate on when Trump will be able to give his State of the Union. Now, this ended with Donald Trump basically admitting defeat, which is great. Now, this all started, of course, when Pelosi asked Trump to delay the speech because right now we shut down the government. Now, she, of course, claimed that, oh, no, it's security concerns. We all know that that's not true. It's not about security concerns. No, this is political. But in this case, Nancy Pelosi outplayed Donald Trump in politics, which I guess, to be fair, is pretty easy to do because Donald Trump's an idiot. Nonetheless, it's great to see her do that. Now, of course, this also shows the leverage that the Democrats have over the president, and they are now teaching him, like, hey, you know what? Now we have divided government. Now it's our turn. Now, as Speaker, of course, Pelosi controls the proceedings in the House, meaning that she can withdraw an invitation for the president to address lawmakers. Now, she cited, as I said, security risks from the shutdown. Again, I don't like that excuse, but it is what it is. But basically, it's, hey, Trump, you're not giving your speech. Sad day for you. To which Trump, of course, threw a fit, as he is prone to doing so, saying that, oh yeah, if you're not going to invite me into the House, I'm just going to come to the House on my own, or I'm going to give the greatest speech somewhere else. That's basically what happened. But all that ended, of course, when he tweeted out that he would accept doing that speech once the shutdown was over, which, of course, could be quite some time. Now, one more thing, too. As strike back for Pelosi basically withdrawing her invitation, Trump actually canceled a scheduled trip to Afghanistan, in which Nancy Pelosi was supposed to go on minutes before she was set to leave. Now, they did that by, of course, leaking that to the press, which would be a massive security risk. So, way to put Nancy Pelosi in a lot of actual danger. There is a reason you don't actually disclose those flights before they, you don't disclose that before they actually get there. Okay. Now, anyway, so at a press briefing, the president, of course, decided to blame the opposition, saying, quote, "I'm not surprised. It's really a shame what's happening with the Democrats. They've become radicalized." No. You know what's radical? Shutting down the government for a wall. Now, first, shutting down the government, deeply unpopular, right? For a border wall, that's also deeply unpopular. As a president who was, as well, you're going to guess, deeply unpopular. Even your regular average Trump voter, right, says, open up the government and stop using the shutdown as a tool to get the wall. If you're going to get the wall, find another way, but don't shut down the government. That said, Trump losing to Pelosi kind of set social media on fire a little bit. I've got a couple of tweets here. One from New York Times' Maggie Haberman. Now, she said, "Can't think of another time since the campaign when he has had to publicly be outplayed by a woman." That's a fair point. Jeff Greenfield tweeted in, "How will this play with the militant Trumpists who are urging him to stand up to Pelosi? How does he react when he reads, sees, and hears all the commentary saying, Trump blinks when he sees life as a zero-sum, I win, you lose contest?" That's actually a great question. Right now, we know that only 7% of registered voters support shutting down the government over the border wall. We know most Trump supporters who want the wall think this is a really dumb way to get it, especially since this is all over $5.7 billion, which, by the way, we have spent shutting down the government anyway. We have lost that money thanks to the government shutdown, right? It is now more expensive to have the government shut down than to have given that to Donald Trump, which is interesting, but nonetheless, no money for that wall. None. And we should not fund it whatsoever. But again, this is over $5.7 billion, which would not have even paid for very much of the wall, maybe a small section. So these hardcore Trumpists are like, what are you doing? It's not even going to pay for the whole wall. We know Mexico's not going to pay for it. We're not dumb. We support what you want to do because we hate immigrants and we're scared, but it doesn't mean we're completely stupid. We know that what you're doing is not smart and it's not going to get you what we want. So stop doing it. Just admit defeat and we go and find another way to fund the wall. Trump's not having any of it. Now, the only people, by the way, who are urging him still to stand up to Pelosi are actually, for the most part, very wealthy conservative pundits, people like Ann Coulter. Now, Ann Coulter is a millionaire. Probably. Guess what she's not affected by? The government shutdown. Look, people like Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh, who, by the way, is also urging the shutdown over the wall, they don't care if government burns. They hate government. They love the fact that food stamps will run out of money soon. They love the fact that government workers are not getting paid because they despise government. There was even an anonymous Trump official that was quoted as saying, look, something along the lines of, and I'm going to, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, so I'm probably going to botch it. But, hey, man, look, this is a great way to shrink government, this whole shutdown. So I'm happy about this. No, okay, well, that's how you feel. That's how these wealthy conservatives feel because they don't care about government. They hate government. They see it as something that's in the way. But most regular people, conservatives included, are now starting to realize, oh, right, the government actually does things that are beneficial to me. Well, you shut it down, you're shutting down my food stamps. You shut it down, you're shutting down my job. I'm not getting paid even though I'm going into work. You know, there's a word for that. So, look, again, that's why this has hit Donald Trump's popularity so much. Now, going back to Ann Coulter, I want to give you this tweet here. She said, I couldn't care less about when Trump gives the State of the Union address. Just build a wall. Break ground down. How about no, you decrepit ghoul? Seriously. That's all she cares about is keeping brown people out of America. And again, she can't actually care about the people who are hurt by the shutdown because she doesn't understand them. And again, doesn't really give a crap about them. Anyway, another tweet here from Brian Goldsmith. He says, if Ann Coulter agrees, I assume Trump will reverse his decision. And finally, we've got Lindsey Graham. Now, Lindsey Graham, I love this, right? Lindsey Graham says, the State of the Union is a tradition which has been carried out during times of war and peace, turmoil, and tranquility. It is an important piece of our history and government. Speaker Pelosi's decision to ignore this long-standing American tradition is absurd, petty, and shameful. The judgment of history will not be kind. You know what? Lindsey Graham's actually right about one thing. History will not be kind to the people who have engineered this shutdown. But it will not be in the way that Lindsey Graham is thinking. Remember, he is part of the same party who, during one of Obama's State of the Union speeches, had somebody yell out, "You lie." So talk about absurd, petty, and shameful, right? So, hey, Lindsey, why don't you save me your crocodile tears, homeboy? Fact is, your deal-maker president just got owned by Nancy Pelosi. And that should make you feel pretty terrible. Okay. Moving on. Let's see, and... oh, yeah, I forgot to set that. We'll do it live. Fuck it. I shouldn't have said that. Now I'm going to get demonetized. Dang YouTube. Okay, anyway. Now, the impact of the government shutdown on the nearly 800,000 federal workers is now actually starting to be noticed by members of the Trump administration. Unfortunately, the reactions to it are pretty terrible. And so I want to give you one example here, and that's Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross. Now, he was on CNBC's Squawk Box to talk about what people who are affected by the shutdown can do to make sure that they pay their bills while not getting paid. Let's take a look.
There are reports that there are some federal workers who are going to homeless shelters to get food.
Well, I know they are, and I don't really quite understand why, because, as I mentioned before, the obligations that they would undertake, say a borrowing from a bank or a credit union, are in effect federally guaranteed. So the 30 days of pay that some people will be out, there's no real reason why they shouldn't be able to get a loan against it. And we've seen a number of ads from financial institutions doing that.
There's Wilbur Ross. So, yeah, just, hey, man, if you're struggling, just go borrow money from a bank. It'll be fine. In fact, later he says, now it's true that people might have to pay a little bit of interest, but the idea that it's paycheck to or zero is not really a valid idea. Look, I love this. This is your, why don't they just have cake moment, right? Why can't you just take out loans? I don't understand. I don't understand why they can't do that. Well, because you schmuck, you're a billionaire. Of course you don't understand, because you don't know what it's like to live like the rest of American. Okay, you don't live paycheck to paycheck. By the way, the little bit of interest might be the difference between putting gas in your car and not being able to. Just saying. And why should they have to do this? Why should they have to go to food banks? Why should they have to consider taking out government loans in order to survive? Why should they have to do that? Is it because of that stupid wall, right? Most Americans don't want to shut down the government over the wall. Most Americans disagree with the entire reason of the shutdown and completely disagree with the shutdown itself. So take that. But leave it to the most out-of-touch people to try to give advice to people who are currently working and not getting paid for it. We have a word for that. Now, of course, the backlash to this is absolutely delicious. And I'm going to give you some quotes here from some politicians We'll start with Nancy Pelosi. She characterized this as a, quote, let them eat cake attitude. She said, quote, he said he doesn't understand why they have to do that. I don't quite understand why, as hundreds of thousands of men and women are about to miss the second paycheck tomorrow. Chuck Schumer, with a little bit of clapback of his own, he says those comments are appalling and reveal the administration's callous indifference toward the federal workers it is treating as pawns. Secretary Ross, they can't just call their stockbroker and ask them to sell some of their shares. Oh, that's good. You just got burned by Chuck Schumer. Oh, what a sad day for you. Oh, that looks terrible. And look, Chuck Schumer would know because Chuck Schumer is pretty wealthy. And he's like, hey, you just can't call these people just can't call their stockbroker like you and I can. You know what I'm saying? So, I was pretty out of touch, man. Oh, when Chuck Schumer points out how out of touch you are, again, ooh, that's bad. Now, we have Senator Bernie Sanders that chimed in as well. Now, he tweeted, billionaires like Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross and Trump may not get it, but it's not complicated. Federal employees go to food banks because they have to feed their kids, and they can't do that without a paycheck. Mr. President, end the shutdown you created. That's fairly to the point from Bernie Sanders, of course, who actually does understand, as he's the poorest senator in the country. Now, you even had CNBC's Jim Cramer. Now, Jim Cramer, again, is one of the hosts of Squawk Box or something like that. One of those shows that rarely talks about actual money, but mainly complains about poor people and etc. Well, even he was like cringing. He said, quote, I thought that was painful. Painful. How could you be that out of touch with people who live paycheck to paycheck? How could you be that out of touch? That's freaking Jim Cramer handing you your ass. Oh, I love it so much. And you know where it comes from? It comes from being a billionaire who never has had to think about never having money. They've never had to worry about, oh man, how am I going to pay these bills? Again, Wilbur Ross is a billionaire. You don't even need that much money. You will never be able to spend it in your entire lifetime. Which, by the way, Wilbur Ross looks as if he's about at the end of that. But anyway, I mean, here's the thing. Why can't they just go to the bank? That's his question, right? Just take out a loan. You have to understand that these workers, once they start missing payments due to not getting paid, that credit takes a hit. That disqualifies them from low-interest loans, right? And, of course, leads people towards unregulated cash advance shops, which can charge an insanely high interest rates. That is the surest way to get stuck in a debt cycle. But again, they don't get it because in their world, they're never exposed to the nearly 40% of Americans that cannot afford a $400 emergency without selling their stuff or having to go and borrow money from an institution, etc. So, and a lot of federal workers, as I said before, they live paycheck to paycheck. And get this. This is in the Washington Post. I'm going to give you this quote here. They said some of the president's allies have started privately worrying that the seemingly callous comments reinforce the perception that the president and his team of wealthy advisors are out of touch with the public. You don't say. It's not just a perception, Washington Post. It's reality. They've got no clue because they live in a completely different world. As I said, and that world includes the Washington Post. If you still think these guys understand and represent you, then you may be the most dense person in the world and are likely the perfect target for some of these grifters that are in power. Okay. Moving on. One more story and then we'll hit the break. Let's go. All right. So Kellyanne Conway is counselor to the president, and she is one of his most shameless supporters. I mean, you see her on TV all the time saying the most ridiculous things and defending Trump no matter what. In fact, she's actually gotten to be the face of the Trump administration's just lack of truth, right? Now, interestingly enough, when she wasn't doing that, she was allegedly talking behind his back to reporters. Which begs the question of, is Kellyanne Conway the White House leaker? Now, according to a new excerpt from former White House communications staffer Cliff Sims, the answer would be yes. Now, in it, of course, he pointed the finger at Kellyanne Conway, saying that, hey man, I caught her in action. Quote, as I watched Kellyanne in operation over our time in the White House, my view of her sharpened. It became hard to look long at her without getting the sense that she was a cartoon villain brought to life. Kellyanne Conway, the cartoon villain. You know what? I can actually see that. I mean, seriously. Like Cruella de Vil, right? Now, he continues. In the White House, Kellyanne managed to land a job with no fixed responsibilities and a huge office where she could just dabble in areas that piqued her interest. And what exactly piqued her interest? What were those interests? Well, as I said before, you know the White House has a very big leaking problem that they've been trying to plug. People constantly talking to reporters and dishing on what Trump has said and the various aides. Sims believes that that leaker is Kellyanne, and he's got allegedly some proof written in his book. Now, he wrote, while drafting a response on her MacBook to Morning Joe, calling her out for being two-faced about Trump, Sims alleges that Kellyanne was sitting at her desk texting away. And since her iMessage account was tied both to her phone and her laptop, which she must not have even considered, I could inadvertently see every conversation she was having. Over the course of 20 minutes or so, she was having simultaneous conversations with no fewer than half a dozen reporters, most of them from outlets the White House frequently trashed for publishing fake news. Oops. So she's having conversations with the reporters, and what was she talking about? What was she saying? According to Sims, Conway basked Jared Kushner, Steve Bannon, and Reince Priebus by name, and had recounted private conversations with President Trump, quote, talking about him like a child she had to set straight. Oh, if that's not true, look, that sounds totally true. That sounds totally like something that someone would have to do. You know why? Because Trump is a child, and I think we've proved it by now. Now, Sims, his reaction was basically bewilderment. He said, I was sitting there watching this, totally bewildered, and I was supposed to be writing a statement defending her against accusations that she had done almost exactly what I was watching her do at that very moment. That's awesome. That is fantastic. Is Kellyanne the White House leaker? Look, if this is true, oh, it would make so much sense. So much sense. Again, this is the one person who goes way over the top to defend the administration. All the while, secretly leaking all these salacious details to the press. Oh, what fantastic irony. And again, it would make sense because if you haven't noticed, George Conway, her husband, has been constantly tweeting out critical things of the presidency. You don't think George Conway and Kellyanne Conway talk about this stuff at home? They have to. And apparently, if this is to be believed, they might actually have a common opinion. So then why is Kellyanne here? Well, because she's ruthless in a good way. And I got to give her, I'm actually giving her credit for this because, look, politics has been a man's game for quite some time. Kellyanne, she knows how to navigate that and actually get to the top. Again, that's weird credit for actually being able to game the system, but she's been doing a pretty good job as, you know, in getting her own office and actually being able to be the ultimate survivor. Again, no one else has lasted in this administration as long as Kellyanne Conway. So she must be doing something right, especially to not get caught until now being a leaker. And again, I don't know if this story is true. It could be somebody who was just an enemy of Kellyanne Conway when they were in the White House, and he wants to sell books, etc. Right? I know all that is possible as well, but who knows, right? Who knows? I'd love to be a fly on the wall at some of those White House meetings, that's for sure. But the only way that we're going to find out if this is true is to wait till Donald Trump is out of office. And that's when, of course, I think Kellyanne Conway eventually writes a book, as I think everybody who's ever worked there likely will. You know what'll happen. It's just a matter of when. Love that story. Okay, guys. I'm going to take a break. We'll come back. We got more stories, including AOC versus Sarah Huckabee Sanders. We've got Chris Cuomo and then Biden. What did Biden get in trouble for? Now you're going to love it. Okay. So stay right here. Come back. Send your super chats. I'll read those after the break. And we'll just stay right here. Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf with you. Okay, so we have a super chat here from Ronnie Lama Richardson donating 20 towards the camera. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Ronnie. Thanks to everybody. I appreciate everybody who has given so far to the fundraiser. We are going to get that camera. So, and it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to show you guys. If you're wondering what that was, I made some tea. So it's actually like ginger. So it kind of helps with my heartburn. Hey, you know what would help if I stopped eating things that were terrible for me? Yeah, not going to happen. So I'm just going to have to live with it. Okay, anyway. So no change here on the fundraiser or memberships. That's okay. You know all the different ways that you can support the show. Let's not go over that. Let's just dive into more stories. Because again, we've got some fun. All right. All right. Now, I know you guys are going to be a little bit critical where I'm going with this story, but believe me, there's a good reason for it. Okay. So-called Christians like Sarah Huckabee Sanders and her father, Mike Huckabee, don't believe in being good stewards of the earth, especially when it comes to things like climate change. That's why they're opposed to things like the Green New Deal. They're opposed to any sort of legislation on actually combating climate change and making sure the world does not get polluted. Now, that's unfortunate because right now we've got about 12 years left to reduce the levels of carbon in the atmosphere before climate change becomes both worse and basically irreversible, which is why progressives like AOC and a lot of the new progressives that are running for 2020 or might run for 2020, especially some of the new and as well as some of the new members of Congress that are, you know, progressive. That's why they're pushing for the Green New Deal. That would actually transform our economy from a fossil fuel driven economy to a clean alternative energy based economy, which would be great for everybody. Again, it would create millions of high paying, great jobs and actually clean up the environment. What's not to like? Well, if you're a fossil fuel company, or apparently Sarah Huckabee Sanders, there's a lot to dislike. Now, Sarah, in a recent Fox News interview with Sean Hannity, basically said, look, I don't believe in that report. I don't believe that anything bad's going to happen. Let's just keep burning fossil fuels. Let's burn coal. Let's, you know, pump oil, et cetera, et cetera. And she said, actually, quote, I don't think we're going to listen to her on much of anything, particularly anything that we will leave into the hands of a much, much higher authority, and certainly not listen to the freshman congresswoman on when the world may end. Now, look, let's be honest. The world is not going to end, but that doesn't mean that the world will be hospitable for human life. That's sort of the problem with climate change. When you change the climate so rapidly, you make it so that we are unable to adapt to those changes. And when things can't adapt, well, what do? They die off. May not be the end of the world, but it could be the end of us. So, but no, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is convinced that, oh, it's okay, Jesus will save us. I love that. And look, I love how derisive she is of people like AOC, while she's also showing at the same time her deep ignorance. And it's not just AOC that says that, by the way, it's the Trump administration. They have their own report that is very damning when it comes to climate change. And not only that, but you have the IPCC. That report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was sourced from hundreds of climate scientists. Those scientists all agree that, hey, maybe we need to do something about this or we're screwed. And Huck's response is, oh, Jesus will save us. We don't have to worry about that. We can just do whatever we want because we're like children and we don't understand consequences. Now, AOC, of course, responded to this because she is master of the clapback with her own Bible verses. She quoted Genesis 2. She said, God commands all people to serve and protect creation, right? And also quotes Leviticus. Now, not the hateful parts of Leviticus, which there are plenty, but she also quoted that God mandates that not only the people, but the land that sustain them shall be respected. Huh. And in a follow-up tweet, she told Sanders that she, quote, shouldn't need a Bible to tell you to protect our planet, but it does anyway. Now, I want to give you the source of her quote here. This is from Relevant Magazine, right? Now, Relevant Magazine basically makes the claim that climate change activism can be biblically based. And sure, in fact, they said, hold on, actually, I don't have the quote here, but that's okay. So, again, I know a lot of you are thinking, yeah, but the Bible has nothing to do with government. I agree with that. We shouldn't have to quote the Bible in order to get politicians and people in power to actually give a crap about, caring about the environment. Nonetheless, apparently we have to, right? I'm an atheist, so I think it's absolutely absurd that we have to have this conversation. But again, you have a bunch of religious zealots who are basically like children, right? And they're in power, and, well, they think that, oh no, we can just mess up the earth no matter what we want, and our sky god will come down and save us. Well, that's not going to happen. And in the Bible even says that's not going to happen. You need to take care of your own mess and actually respect the world, respect the earth, respect creation. Because, think about it, right? It doesn't take a biblical scholar to realize that we shouldn't be messing up the earth with our pollution. I mean, look, does she actually believe that God, and I'm not saying he exists, I agree, I believe the opposite. But if he or she or it did, then would you think that they would look at what we've done to the planet and think, oh no, those humans are doing fine. In fact, oh, look, they messed this up. Now we're going to go and save them. My guess is no. Probably not. If there's a God, she's probably pissed at humanity, especially the latest crop of politicians a la Trump and the Trump administration for basically how we've been treating the environment. Whoever they are, if they exist, has got to be pissed. And frankly, I would agree. I'd be pissed too. Okay. Moving on. Oh, this is great. All right. So Venezuela has been in the news a lot. Basically, what's going on here is there is a coup attempt that is backed by the United States. In fact, President Trump tweeted out support for a right-wing corporate-backed opposition leader who basically declared himself president. Now, look, for me personally, I don't think we should get involved. Venezuelans need to sort out their own problems. That said, Venezuela has been used as a talking point for Republicans, for right-wingers, for quite some time. Now, during a discussion about immigration, of all things, Chris Cuomo decided to challenge that notion of Venezuela on his show. And you're not going to believe this, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. Take a look.
There are reports that there are some...
You're right. We have a lot of crime in the United States, and there's ways we can and should address that. But illegal alien crime is 100% preventable in every single case. We just had over the weekend the arrest of an illegal alien who killed an elderly 80-year-old couple in Nevada. I mean, this is very real-world pain that these people have to deal with. One of the tools to fight that kind of illegality and that kind of pain is a border
You
wall.
apply
That's what
that
law enforcement tells
rationale
us they
to
need.
no other type of crime prevention in this country. The idea that something's 100%, you know what's 100% preventable? Poverty. You know what's 100% preventable? Hunger in the richest country in the world. No urgency like that on those problems, though. You get people jobs.
How is poverty 100% preventable? Because are you going to say socialism?
The economy up
because take a look at Venezuela.
Venezuela. Because that's a great strategy you got going there, right? You starve these countries of support. Then you create environments on the ground where they can blow up, and then you stand back and watch them burn. What are we going to do there now? What are we going to do in the triangle if he cuts aid to them? Come on, Steve.
Yeah, come on, Steve. Don't be a douchebag. I swear that's probably what where he was going to go if he weren't on TV. But look, I love this. For a brief moment, you had Comrade Cuomo. I know. But look, he's right, though. Poverty is 100% preventable. And we don't use that standard. Again, by the way, if you build a wall, that's not going to prevent illegal immigrants from coming over, or undocumented immigrants from coming over, as a majority of them fly over, right? They fly in and they overstay their visas. It's not going to stop that. And the idea that, oh, a wall will stop old immigrant crime, but laws or whatever isn't going to stop anything else, that's absurd. It's ludicrous. And so Cuomo points that out. He's absolutely correct, and is also absolutely correct on poverty, right? And again, he brings up the poverty point, and right-wingers, just like a Pavlovian reaction. But Venezuela is working so well over there. Really? Okay, but we'll get to that. But as far as poverty being 100% preventable, well, let's look at the numbers, right? Right now, the 3 wealthiest Americans hold more wealth than the bottom 50% of all Americans. The Forbes top 400 richest people have $2.68 trillion in wealth. All of that money is hoarded to the top. You could actually redistribute that to every single American family and give them about $10,000. Now, that's not saying that we're going to do that, and I'm not even in favor of doing that, right? I am in favor of some redistribution via taxes and programs, but I'm saying that the money is actually there. You could alleviate poverty if you wanted to. And again, most families wouldn't actually need that $10,000, so you could really focus on families that are living in absolute poverty, like people in, for example, Alabama, that are getting hookworm because they have no actual sanitation. They live near open sewage. So maybe we could work on that. Maybe direct some of that tax money that's sitting at the top from these very wealthy Americans, very wealthy corporations, and actually fix that problem. Or fix the fact that Flint doesn't have clean water. It takes $55 million to go and fix everything in Flint so that everybody has clean water. Only $55 million. That's a drop in the bucket to a billionaire, by the way. So, and as far as billionaires are concerned, AOC is right. If a society that allows billionaires to exist is immoral, you're never going to use that money. You're not going to need that money. What are you going to do with $1 billion? It's inconceivable that you would spend that. You could literally buy anything that you want in the world and still have more than enough money to live in incredible, lavish luxury for the rest of your life. At a certain point, it becomes, having this amount of wealth just becomes, look how rich I am. It becomes, I swear, I think hoarding wealth should be classified as a mental illness. The same as if you're hoarding your things. Because it's the same thing. You get some sort of mental satisfaction out of having all that money that you're never going to use. And that is just kept from society. And of course, when you keep all that money from society, it doesn't get recirculated back into the economy. And that's what taxes are supposed to be. Taxes are supposed to just recirculate that money back into the economy so that other people can use it. Other people can spend it. And so when you have stagnation at the top, you end up having terrible outcomes as we do today and terrible poverty. Now, redistribution, yes, could eliminate that poverty. And so he's right. Cuomo nails it. Now, widespread poverty is unequivocally a choice in this country. But let's go to the important part here, right? And that's the idea that every time somebody mentions a social program to eliminate poverty or guarantee healthcare or guarantee debt-free education, it's immediately met with, but Venezuela. Well, again, Cuomo's right. We basically meddled in their economy, sanctioned them, sided with the 70%. And did you know this? They call themselves a socialist economy, right? 70% of the businesses in Venezuela were privately owned. Privately owned corporations. There is a business class that clashed with the Chavez regime and the Maduro regime. And basically what they did is that they made sure to try to sabotage the economy in order to change the leadership so they don't get taxed as much. So they basically did that with the aid of Saudi Arabia that helped crash their oil prices, which they depended on for their social programs, right? And so now we've got this economic ruin that is mostly engineered by wealthy billionaires and oil barons and corporate CEOs. That's the situation. And not only that, but America, as I said before, sanctioned them, and sanctions hurt the poorest of old people, right? So, and sanctions, by the way, they're meant to hurt poor people. Don't get confused at what sanctions actually are there for. They're meant to hurt people, regular people, so that they get tired of the leadership, rise up and overthrow it. Let's be honest about that. Every time we impose sanctions on a country, we think that will happen, or that will change their mind. It will get people outraged enough to change a certain policy. That's why I'm not necessarily in favor of sanctions. But anyway, that's what's happening here. And so the argument is of if we tax the rich more, if we help alleviate poverty, or we get a higher living wage or a Medicare for all, right? We'll turn into Venezuela. That's the argument. It's not remotely true. It is a scare tactic engineered by business leaders and right-wingers to keep more of their money from getting taxed and used to benefit society because of their pathology of money. So congratulations to Cuomo for actually getting it right. It turns out, I think when you let him actually speak his mind, he turns out to be a fairly smart guy. Okay. I'm going to need one more quick break. We've got more. We're going to do the Biden story, like I said. So stay right here, around the nation. Welcome back to the show, Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf with you. Okay, let's dive in. Let's get to the last story here. Been promising it for a while. All right. So recently it was reported that Joe Biden had come to Michigan during the election, let me start that again. So recently an article came out about Vice President Joe Biden. Now, Biden, of course, in this story published by the New York Times, surprisingly enough, they wrote about how Biden helped a Michigan Republican possibly win his election. Now, this was, of course, going on during the midterm elections where, of course, we were expecting a blue wave, and essentially we got it. And it turns out that blue wave might have actually been a little bit bigger here in Michigan had Joe Biden actually helped the Democrat in the race. Now, let me give you the details real quick here. Now, the article pointed out that he had a paid speech that he performed in at Lake Michigan College with Fred Upton. Now, Fred Upton was not actually giving a speech as well. He was in the crowd, but he was very, very nice to Fred Upton. In fact, according to the article, Biden was collecting $200,000 from the Economic Club of Southwestern Michigan to address a Republican-leaning audience. Now, this is according to a speaking contract obtained by the New York Times and with interviews with organizers. Now, that group is a business-minded civic organization and is supported in part by the Upton Family Foundation. Now, Mr. Biden had said that, the New York Times said that Mr. Biden had praised Mr. Upton when he was giving that speech for $200,000 to a Republican audience. So now, how does that help Republicans? How did that hurt the Democrats? Well, it turns out what he said in the speech actually ended up going in Republican ads. In fact, Eric Lester. Now, Eric Lester is a retired physician who chaired the Democratic Party in Berrien County during the midterms. He said he viewed Mr. Biden's supportive remarks about Upton as a betrayal. Lester, who attended the speech, said he had confronted an aide to Mr. Biden in the hallway, telling him that the former vice president had badly damaged the Democratic cause. He said, "It just gives Fred Upton cover and makes it possible for him to continue to pretend to be a useful, bipartisan fellow." Now, of course, what's this all about? Well, look, Fred Upton had actually done a bipartisan bill for cancer research. Now, it makes sort of sense that Biden would be in favor of that since his son, Beau Biden, died in 2015 of brain cancer. So, look, I get it. I get the bipartisanship. I get all that. But, okay, look, if you're going to do a speech and you're going to get paid $200,000, in fact, it's $150,000 for the speaking, and then a $50,000 travel allowance. Well, that's a pretty big travel allowance, right? Look, I'm actually not bothered by him getting paid for doing speeches. I know that sounds crazy, even speeches for Republicans. But what was he doing to help the Democrat in the race? That's Matt Longjohn. Well, it turns out he didn't do anything for Matt Longjohn. He refused to endorse him. Interesting. So basically, regarding Mr. Biden's decision, according to the Times, not to endorse Mr. Upton's Democratic challenger, Matt Longjohn, his spokesman, Mr. Russo, said the former vice president had, quote, received hundreds of requests for endorsements from all over the country and endorsed 135 races this cycle where his impact would be greatest. You don't think going to Michigan would have an impact? Your endorsement would have an impact? Seriously? Matt Longjohn lost by like 4.5 points. That might have made a difference. Especially since what you had here was Republicans using this speech, taking it, putting it in ads, and saying, look, even Joe Biden thinks Fred Upton is really great, is one of the greatest people he's ever worked with. That definitely helped Republicans. And of course, that helped Joe Biden too, because he got $200,000 out of the deal. I mean, that's crazy. Now, I want to show you some of the Democratic response to this. As I said before, Mr. Lester, in an email to Biden's staff, Lester employed the former vice president to back Mr. Longjohn. Surely, he said, VP Biden did not intend to endorse Mr. Upton and slight the local Democratic candidate. But he ended up getting no response. He said his campaign had reached out to Mr. Biden's staff through an intermediary, seeking to discuss his involvement in the race, but Longjohn said, quote, there was nothing but silence. We had just requested a phone call, and there was no response. What about helping Democrats? No, you're supposed to help Democrats, right? I thought one of the things that establishment politicians always go after Bernie Sanders for, oh, you didn't help Democrats enough during 2016. Oh, you didn't help Democrats enough in 2018. Oh, you're not even a Democrat. You're not even a Democrat. Well, is this what Democrats do? Joe Biden's a Democrat. He just helped a Republican win in Michigan and refused to endorse a Democrat for one of these races. Oh, but he endorsed 135 other candidates. And you couldn't be... Look, this looks really bad because, again, Biden got $200,000 in speaking fees to go and speak to a Republican audience. No, he's done. He's done. He's done. And actually, you know what? After I give you the quote from earlier today about this, I'm going to show you why he's done. Former Vice President Joe Biden on Thursday morning responded to the New York Times article by saying this, quote, I get in trouble. I read the New York Times today, and that one of my problems is if I ever run for Republicans, or I'm sorry, if I run for president, I like Republicans. Well, bless me, Father, for I have sinned, he quipped to laughter in the room. That is incredibly dismissive. Here you have Joe Biden revealing whom he really is. Look, the memes were fun. And, you know, the Obama term, oh, it's crazy, kooky Uncle Joe. Well, this is who Joe Biden is. All of that was a mask obscuring who he really is. He is a political animal, and he is one of those people who is more than happy to work with Republicans, right? Even on stuff that I may agree with. But at the same time, this same Republican, by the way, Fred Upton, created a bill to take away health care from Americans. You can't call him out on that? You can't endorse the actual Democrat in the race? No, for the people who support both Joe Biden and hate Bernie Sanders because you didn't support Democrats enough, you might want to take a look at this. Might be interesting for you to check out. Look, I think he's done. I don't think he can come back from this. I don't think this is something... Look, he's playing by the old rule book. Oh, no, if I just pal around with the Republicans because people want bipartisanship, well, that's not going to work. Well, look, here's the thing. Look, I think this is over. He's done with. He's not going to survive a Democratic primary, especially with, all these actual progressives that are working on good policy. And so, yeah, I know it's really early, but I think Biden is done. Okay. That's it. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for going around the nation with me. Make sure to like and share the stream if you haven't already. And tune in tomorrow. We'll have a great show. Up next is TYT. All right. Love you guys. Thank you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you tomorrow.